Welcome in, everybody. Week 9 is officially in the books. This is the RSN wrap-up show. I'm Mike DeWant here with Rick Novak, the former Andrean 59ers, Zach Miller production, doing it all as always. It's been a crazy week, man. Regular season's in the books. Now it's time to get to the real games, and we'll start it off. We got some games to break down. First one, your alma mater, tough one at the Inferno, 16-14. Talk about a little bloodbath there, in the mud, in the Inferno mud, with all that rain coming down. Talk to me about that game. That's you know Andrean Lowell probably better than anybody in this company. So
yeah, I mean, Lowell's had Andrean's number the past few years, and any game that they've played the past 3 years, it seems like they've just been able to out-physical Andrean basically, and they did it again tonight. So I was hoping to see the Niners go down to the Inferno and maybe, step up a little bit and try to win this game, and a game that they haven't won in a few years. And it was kind of the same old story, to be honest. You had Lowell just every year it seems like they just keep getting better and better towards the end of the year. And again, tonight they seemed to play their best game, and they just out-physical the Niners, and they pushed them around, and they deserved to win. And it was as a former Niner player, it was a little frustrating to watch. I'm not gonna lie, because it was a little tough because they did get pushed around there, and it's been that way for a few years. So you gotta give credit to Lowell. I mean, that's their MO, and they play smash mouth football, and tonight they smashed the mouths of the 59ers.
Yeah, I did my research a little bit on I kind of said this on Region Football Weekly with my main man Jack Thiel, but I looked at the last 14 meetings. My math probably was wrong, but between these two teams, they split it 7-7.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I mean, you playing in some of those games, it always seems like, Week 9, of course, this is probably different than most years. Nothing's really on the line like it usually is with the NCC conference title, but nonetheless, it's a bloodbath. And, well, again, it's, weather benefiting like probably some of these teams are going to talk about today, but alongside that, we had a new stadium today. Boone Grove opened up their stadium against Bishop Knoll, got the dub, 45-0. Another offensive outburst from that BG team. We had Benton Central play Bowman Academy. Benton won 46-6. I believe that was the last score we have listed. Westside, a big game against Calumet. Me and Jack Thiel kind of talked about it on Region Football Weekly. Also, this is a budding rivalry, I think, in the GSSC. With Westside coming in their first season in the GSSC, this is going to be a very fun Week 9 matchup for years to come, and this was one here as we see.
Yeah, and these teams have played for the past few years before Westside even joined the conference. They're pretty close together. I think the schools are only about 10, 15 minutes away from each other driving. So, yeah, I definitely think this is a budding rivalry. I think they're calling it the Battle for Calhoun Street. It looked like they had a trophy there tonight. I saw some West Side players online posing with a trophy. So it definitely looks like they're turning this into a rivalry, and it was a good game tonight. West Side going in there, picking up a close victory, getting to 6 wins in their first year in the GSSC. We've talked about Hanover and their ability to come into the NCC and do real well. Well, Westside took their spot in the GSSC, and they've done very well as well. So we've seen a couple teams this year go into new conferences, take a step up in the competition that they've been playing, and they've been ready to go. They've been up to the task. So good job by Coach Boz and those Westside Cougars going to get into 6-3. I believe it's their 3rd straight season that they've won 6 games in the regular season. So great job. They've done a good job building that program over there.
West Side 30, our 9th rated West Side, won 30-28 over Calumet. Big game for them. Maryville Pirates got the job done against a Chesterton team that I think fights in a lot of games. They showed that last week against Crown Point, but Maryville got the job done on there. I don't think it was their senior night. I think they had it earlier in the season, but nonetheless, their last home game of the regular season. They won that 35-7 over the Trojans, a team that they lost to last year too. So shout out to Brad Cease and the Pirates for getting another big win against a DAC opponent. Moving on to the Wheeler Bearcats. Speaking of GSSC teams, they got the job done against a solid Griffith Panther team, a young team. We were there for that game, but yeah, Wheeler 27-6. They win their first division title in the GSSC since 2015.
Oh, wow,
Shout out to Nick Testa, first-year head coach. He led them to a magical season, and from what we heard, it was a slugfest. Not a lot of passes thrown, from our crew there. We'll get into that a little bit later, but it was they outran Griffith from what I heard.
Yeah, I mean, Griffith. Griffith has had that up and down season. They started losing, I believe, their first 3 games. Then they won 3 in a row. Now they've lost 3 in a row again. And Coach Phil Mason's first year, they're still working out the growing pains, I think. But Coach Nick Testa over there for Wheeler. I mean, I didn't realize it had been that long since they had won a conference title in the GSSC. So big ups to them, getting that 6th win of the year, getting that conference title. Now they go into a sectional that is kind of winnable. I mean, Andrean looks very vulnerable. You've got some teams more out east that are solid, but Wheeler, they've got a shot at maybe making a run towards a sectional championship here, I think.
And they get a bye first.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
They're the one team in that sectional that has a bye.
That's a big advantage.
I'll talk about maybe not getting lucky, but I mean having a great season like that and then getting a bye your first round, that's not terrible. So
the ping pong balls bounce their way, I guess.
Frozen envelope, you say whatever, But again, shout out to Wheeler. It's been a fantastic year for them, and expect big things coming these next few weeks. But now moving on, Hanover Central, another unblemished season for the Wildcats, 9-0 now. Beat the Hammond Central Wolves at their place, 35-0 at Cedar Lake. Again, not much more we could say about Hanover. I'm sure we'll talk about them later about how dominant they've been, but it's another day in the books for the Cats. Moving on, the Brickies, we were at there tonight. It was a slashing in the senior night for the Brickies. Again, 48-0 over the Highland Trojans, and I think that is 27-0 against Highland all time from what I found on research. They are.
Yeah, I mean
that's moving on. But River Forest.
Not much to say.
Not much to say. Again, Hobart. I mean, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But that's a very solid Hobart team, and they got a very, very big game next week that we're excited to talk about later on this show. Moving on, the River Forest Ingots put up a 62-0 spot on the Lake Station Eagles on their senior night. Moving on to Valparaiso, our third-ranked Valparaiso Vikings got the job done against Lake Central. Moving on to 7 wins of the year, Valpo won 47-7 on their senior night. Moving on, a 1v6 that did not feel like a 1v6. It seems like we kind of have this talk all the time about Crown Point. They're in these games where it's a top 10 matchup, and they just they spoil it, man. It's like, let us have some fun, but they just continue to do work. And again, they beat City 38-0. I mean, what more could you say, Rick, about this team?
They've the only close game they've had is Valpo. That's the only time that they've even been remotely challenged. They've got a great coaching staff. They've got a very physical defense. They've got an offense that's got some versatility. They can throw it. They can run it. They're the most complete team, obviously. I mean, there's a reason that no one, like I said, other than Valpo has challenged them, and they're very good. And now it's for them. It's about trying to make the run that they couldn't make last year, and it's about correcting that and going further.
Final score from Thursday: the Governors got it done against the EC Cardinals. They win the GLAC, outright. They beat EC 46-2. Me and Jack Theo were talking. There might be scoregami out there for. You don't see many 46-2 games out there. That was an interesting one. But
I think that is probably scoregami.
Scoregami, they call it. A score that's never happened before, at least in a long time. 46-2 is an interesting one. And again, Morton, very solid team. They got a big game. They do have a bye next week, but we'll talk about their section a little bit later. But moving on to an NCC matchup, that my Munster Mustangs got the dub against the KV Cougars, going into hostile territory, 28-24. That was a pretty solid game from what I saw. We're kind of keeping tabs on it a little bit, and the rain definitely played a big part in that.
Oh, I think it was a sloppy game. I mean, both these teams want to play smash mouth football. Oh, yeah. KV had the ball within the 5-yard line with about 30 seconds to go and fumbled it. And Munster was able to recover and just burn the clock out. Big win for Munster. They've been close, I think. They've lost some close games. They needed a conference victory like that. I felt good watching that. I felt good, even though as an Andrean guy, I'm not supposed to root for Munster.
Look at you, man. Look at you.
I must admit, maybe I'm getting soft.
Making me blush, man. Maybe because I'm a Munster guy. Who knows, man?
But I was happy to see them get a win. They needed that.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. Moving on to a DAC matchup, the LaPorte versus Portage. Big game. LaPorte gets their second win of the year, 12-0 over the Portage Indians. Moving on to Whiting. Whiting took care of the South Central Satellites. Probably a game that you could see South Central definitely winning the way they've been playing as of late. And Whiting, they've been on kind of a tough spell, but Whiting got the job done at home, 30-8. And our final game listed, Tri-County Cavaliers beat the North Newton Spartans, 56-20. That's all the scores we got. You could find all of our scores on our hometown scoreboard, courtesy of our friends at Strack and Van Til. We'll be posting those finals kind of all night. They'll be rotating on our social media platforms throughout the rest of the night and into tomorrow. But that's for the scores. We're going to take a little quick break here on the RSN Wrap-Up Show on the Region Sports Network, the only game in town.
Update your kitchen or bathroom with Von Tobel. Get 20% off select cabinets now through October 28th. Von Tobel has cabinets and vanities in a range of styles and colors, plus built-in storage, countertops, and flooring. Our designers will help you find the perfect selections for your style and budget. Scan to visit VonTobels.com today to book your free consultation at one of our 4 Indiana showrooms. Von Tobel, building better together.
If you work with industrial, pneumatics, or hydraulics, and you're in need of maintenance or repair, you need the right connection. For over 20 years, Hose Connections in Hammond has been the premier leader in the hydraulics industry. Hose Connections is a one-stop shop for sales and service of pneumatics and hydraulics. Hose Connections continues to grow their network of industry contacts, which allows them to meet even your toughest expectations. To learn more, visit HoseConnectionsInc.com. Hose Connections in Hammond. Proven under pressure.
When life takes you places and you can't get to the store, shop online with Strack and Van Til To Go. Our to-go service is easy to use and it can save you time and money. Once your order is in, our own Strack and Van Til team preps your order with care. For delivery or pickup, enjoy the convenience of letting our to-go team shop for you. Enjoy your special moments. Sign up online today at shop.strackandvantil.com.
Hi, I'm Crowell Company's Lantern Man. I'll cover your motorcycle. I'll be with you on the water. I'll be with you on the snow. I'll cover your insurance needs wherever you go. I'll be at Crowell Agency from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. As Crowell Company's Lantern Man, I'm your insurance superhero.
Crowell Companies, the insurance professionals in Highland, Maryville, and Michigan City.
From schools to stadiums, hospitals and bridges, everywhere you look, union carpenters are building Indiana. With jobs and skilled trades in high demand, there's never been a better time to start building your future. As an apprentice, you'll earn a debt-free college degree, earn while you learn, and receive great benefits like healthcare and retirement. So what are you waiting for? Visit carpenters.com to learn more. Visit carpenters.com and start building your future today.
Welcome back to the RSN Wrap-Up Show. I'm Mike Dewan here with Rick Novak. We're going to go over a little bit of the games, the 3 games we covered tonight, all video broadcasts, which you can catch the replay of on all of our social media platforms. But these were our 3 game nights built by Von Tobel. We're going to start off with the Panthers and the Bearcats. We harped on it a little bit. It was obviously a big game for the Bearcats, winning their first outright GSSC division title since 2015 in Nick Testa's first season as head coach of Wheeler. Yeah, Griffith, from what I see, they got out to a solid start. They were up 6-0, and then things got away from them. I think you kind of harped on it a little bit. There's a lot of growing pains, I think, for this Griffith team. So talk to me a little bit about, I guess, looking at, I know you watched this game. You were definitely still in the studio watching this, but what did you see in that game?
I think, Griffith, it's a very young team. I think that's kind of, and you can tell that it's younger guys out there. And I think they're still adjusting to that, trying to play a little bit more physically, trying to play kind of how Coach Mason wants them to be honest. I think they did a good job. I think they're still trying to build their depth, still trying to build up their team. I think that's really what I noticed in terms of on the Griffith side. From Wheeler, I thought Wheeler's passing game looked pretty good. When they did throw it, they were able to get some big completions. They were able to run the ball pretty effectively there starting in the second half. Wheeler impressed me, to be honest. I picked Griffith going into this game. I did think Griffith was going to be able to come away with it. And Wheeler just kind of wore him down, used probably a little bit better, superior depth, a little bit bigger players, a little bit more physicality, and just was able, like I said, wear Griffith down and kind of pull out a victory late in the game.
I think from what I see, kind of doing my research on these 2 teams that were, some have flirted with the top 10 list of ours and some are, been on the bubble. Nonetheless, they are both very young teams, especially Griffith having 1 senior. Wheeler, though, is, they got some guys that are juniors. We kind of mentioned this kind of 3-headed backfield they have with Caleb Klimzak, their quarterback, Bryce Compton, their wide receiver, and Jaden Ortiz, their running back. But we got some awards to hand out for that game. We're going to start with our Crowell Company's Lantern Man superhero of the game, and it starts with Jaden Ortiz. In a game like this, where it's raining, you can't really resort to that passing game as much as you'd like. You know, we talk about Compton and Clemsack, that connection through the air, but from what I saw from Jay Ortiz, he had 3 touchdowns, I think over 200 yards on the ground. I think you need a player like that, especially with sectionals coming up. The weather's not going to be great, and it's important to have a player to be that bell cow.
Of course. I mean, it's in Indiana high school football, it's always going to be a run-first game, I mean, offensively. So you got to always have that bell cow guy that, you know, you can hand him the ball 30 times a game, and he's going to be able to take that load and get you those hard yardage that you need, especially in the playoffs. So for him to have that kind of performance going into sectionals, you got to love that if you're Coach Testa. They just kept feeding him the rock, and eventually he was able to start gashing that Griffith defense for big plays.
Sounds like it. Sounds like speaking of another bell cow, we also have a blue collar Boilermakers Local 374 award to hand out, and that is going to go to Jackson Lawson of Griffith. We usually talk about him because he's a slasher of a running back. He's up there for our leaderboards in touchdowns and rushing yards, and he did his work on the defensive end from what I see. He had 2 interceptions in this game, and he obviously made his presence known. Maybe not so much on the offensive side where he usually is known for, but on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, he took advantage of it. It was just, wet, sloppy.
Yeah.
Wheeler, like I said, they weren't afraid to pass the ball, and they did have some pretty nice completions, but they did throw 2 picks. But thankfully for them, it didn't come back to haunt them. But great play by that safety from Griffith. He was doing good all night, just not enough.
Yeah, it's a tough game in this weather, and again, we credit Wheeler for what they've done this year, and we're going to credit them on our last award to hand out, which is the Proud Union Play of the Game, and that was a 35-yard fake punt by Wheeler in the 4th quarter. Sounded like that kind of was the last. I mean, just to put the game away, basically. Momentum's all on your side. You kind of win it with your special teams, and they showed, I guess, another 3 phases of Wheeler. That's what they do, it sounds like. So. Yeah,
sometimes you got to go for the jugular, so to speak.
Yeah,
I
right?
mean, don't play with your food. I mean, that's kind of what you got to do. Sometimes you just got to go for the nail in the coffin and be aggressive. Don't play not to lose, play to win as a coach. And Coach Testa wasn't afraid to take a risk, and it worked out big, and that was the icing on the cake, so to speak.
Rolling the dice, we say. We got to shout out our crew that went there. First off, the cameraman Scott Stessel was behind the lens. We had production from Nate Ramian. Color was Doug Nelson. The play-by-play guy was yours truly, Jack Thiel. He also put up some nice graphics, so shout out Jack. But anyways, we're going to move on to Hobart Highland. That was, that was quick.
It was competitive until halftime, until kickoff.
Yeah, it's tough to go to the Bricky Bowl playing that team. Hobart's. They're very solid. They're one of the more balanced teams, I think, in the area, we saw that tonight.
Yeah, I mean, they've got an explosive offense. I think they've had some high-scoring games this year where they've put up a lot of points, and they jumped all over Highland. It seemed like as soon as we turned on the game upstairs, it was 14-0. Yeah. I mean, they were all over them. It was senior night for Hobart. They were pumped up, playing in front of their home crowd. And they just took it to Highland. I mean, they took them to the woodshed. I mean, honestly, I didn't even watch the second half. I'd seen enough in the first, to be completely honest. Hobart going in, they've got sectionals next week against a New Prairie team that knocked them out last year. It's a very good program. New Prairie ended up going to the state championship. So, I mean, it's going to be a slobber knocker next week. It's a sectional championship worthy game happening the first week of the playoffs. So if you don't have anywhere else to be, I'd recommend going there because it should be a good game.
Take that drive. Slobber knocker. I didn't think we'd hear that tonight. That's expanding the vocabulary. I like that. But we're going to, from what Highland, I kind of saw from Highland, I was there, and Highland, it was just kind of a ball security game, and Highland coughed at the ball a couple times, including on the first play of the game where Hobart punched it in. I believe the very next play, I got to give a shout out to Johnny Sorensen, too, who's been the quarterback, who's been fantastic. But we do have some other awards to give out from that game. First off, we have the superhero of the game by Crowell Company's Lantern Man. It's going to go to Max Pickett, the sophomore. We always talk about Willie Shearher, who had 41 carries last week for 200-plus yards, but it was different this week. It was the backup Max Pickett, who really can't be classified as a backup. He could start probably a lot of other schools, and he looked fantastic tonight. I think he had 4 or 5 touchdowns. Oh, wow. Something crazy fantasy score for him, and he had a nice day, and I bet he's in a nice little hot bath right now or something, kind of cooling off after that long day at the office. Moving on to our blue-collar player of the game, Boilermakers Local 374, and it's actually going to the Brickies defense. pitching a shutout, of course, and forcing a couple turnovers. Of course, the fumble early, and they had a couple fumble recoveries and sacks and whatnot throughout the game. So we got to give a shout out to that Bricky unit. And then finally, the the Proud Union play of the game was one of Pickett's touchdowns. Was a 75-yard score. Showed off the wheels a little bit for the big fella, and he made a couple moves. And yeah, I'm telling you, Hobart. I think we're going to talk about them a little bit when we harp on the sectional kind of pairings, but they are a tough team.
No, they are, and that blue collar, their defense, everyone wants to talk about their offense, but their defense has been quietly very, very good. I mean, they're hard to move the ball against. Eric Schreiber Jr., their defensive coordinator, former head coach at Westside, does a very good job with those guys. So their defense has been playing very good, pitching another shutout tonight. They're going to be hard to score against, and anytime you can play good defense, obviously that helps you astronomically, especially when you've got an offense that can put points on the board like they can.
A lot of momentum for those Brickies going into a big game next week, of which we'll talk about. But shout out to the crew there. We had Bob Guerrero behind the lens. On production was yours truly there. I was on production at Hobart, so apologies for any mistakes on my end. On the color, we had Josh Huddleston. On the play-by-play, we had Leo Staudacher. Finally, our final game night in the region built by Von Tobel, was Lake Central at Valpo, and this was another game that got away from the Indians pretty quickly from what we saw. Yeah,
Valpo, last week I called their game against Portage, and we saw their backup running back, now their starting running back, Thomas Berta, go down with an injury in the first half and didn't return, and that kind of set their whole offense kind of out of whack.
And Clark, too, got hurt.
Yeah, and Clark, but this week they were both starting the game, both running the football effectively, and their offensive line just completely dominated this game. They were pushing around the LC defensive line the entire game. They got anything they wanted running the ball, and if you can't stop Valpo from running the ball, you're going to have a long night because that's their MO, and their defense was like a boa constrictor. You had Kwiatkowski, the quarterback for LC, was out. Williams, the running back for LC, was out. So their starting backfield for the Indians was out. And when you're playing against a defense as good as Valpo's, that's tough enough. And Valpo gave them no quarter. They were coming at them all night, and it was tough sledding for the LC offense to do basically anything.
It's again another big momentum game for playing a solid LC team that has been a little bit banged up. I know their quarterback Chase Kwiatkowski did not play this evening, and he's kind of one of their big guys on the offense to really lead them to if they wanted to have a chance. He was probably one of the guys that they really needed to suit up, and it was tough to see him out. But speaking of Clark and Berta, those were two of some of our award winners that were passing out. For our Crowd Company superhero of the game was Justin Clark. He had 3 total touchdowns, just made plays. It's good to have him back, a dual threat quarterback that could really do it all.
Yeah, I mean, and he really didn't have to be a dual threat guy tonight. He was just running the football. Yeah. I mean, it seemed like, Valpo, they had 2 tight ends, and they were just running it off tackle all night, and LC just could not stop them. I mean, it was Clark, it was Berta, and it was just the thunder and the lightning basically, it was unstoppable. LC just had no answer for those two. They complement each other very nicely.
And that's a solid defense, too. I like that LC defense.
No, they are.
We were at a couple games this year of them, and I was pretty impressed with how they played against Crown Point and Michigan City. But moving on to our blue-collar Boilermakers Local 374 player of the game was Thomas Berta. 2 touchdowns, 70-plus yards on the ground again. Another running back that I bet could start for, he's not technically the starter. He is kind of now with Davis's injury, but he could start probably at every other school in the region, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, he's a great back. I got to see him when they played Andrain earlier in the season. Davis was still healthy, but they were using Berta kind of as the backup. And I thought the same thing at the time. Like, this kid is good enough to be the starting running back for basically any other team. And when you've got depth like that, especially at a position for Valpo that's so important because they are such a run-heavy offense, you got to love that if you're Coach Marshall. You lose your 6-foot, 230-pound running back, Travis Davis, but then you bring in a guy that's 5'10", 215 at running back. I mean, not a lot of teams around here have that kind of depth at skill positions to be able to do that and almost not lose a step. So it's a testament to Berta's work ethic, and it's a testament just to that Valpo program that they've built a program with that kind of depth and the players that good from top to bottom, basically.
Yeah, I don't know what's in the water out there in Valpo, but it's something, and I think I want a piece of it, man.
They got some big boys.
That was probably
there.
A very emotional senior night, I'd say, at Valpo again, with what that class alone has accomplished. Of course, the state championship last year, and I think they have a sectional streak that dates back, I think, even before their class were freshmen. So
Yeah.
and I unfortunately have been a part of that on the wrong end of things, but they're a very solid program that, again, led by that senior class who's going to do some things in the sectional, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But our final award for that game was our proud Union play of the game, was actually the lone score for LC. Cameron Reddick, the backup quarterback for LC, found Owen Denny for an 80-yard touchdown. Put LC on the board, get some promise for that team, and again, get Cameron Reddick, again, a backup. Who knows the status of Kwiatkowski? Of course, they're going into the bye next week, but you kind of want to see these players, again, step up, make some plays, and it's promising for the team going into the biggest time of the year.
Yeah, something positive, right? I mean, you lose 47-7, but you got something at least one play that was positive, right? I mean, when you lose games like that, you try to glean anything positive from it, right? So LC, they're kind of that team that's kind of been, for the past few years, at least since Coach Good has got there, it seems like they're kind of right there trying to break into that next level in the Duneland, and they just haven't been able to, unfortunately.
It was a weird season from what we saw. Jack and I did research on it, and they did not, going into this game, they did not win 2 straight or lose 2 straight. It was win-loss, 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 and then now we're here.
It's hard to get momentum like that. That's so choppy. It's hard to actually get things going like that. So
they say 1 step forward and 2 steps back.
That the Duneland is a hard conference. It's super hard to put victories together like that. So, I mean, I want to root for LC. I think it's. There's only 2 6A programs in the region, the Crown Point and LC. If both of them are good, I think it's good for region football.
I think Portage is too.
I'm sorry.
Portage faithful, but
it's
late.
They got to get. I mean, they need to get good. Yeah.
Yeah. There's room for improvement for some of these teams, and it's of course the biggest of the big. You kind of you're hoping for the best for these, especially with kind of what the circumstances of some of these teams have. Of course, you have Crown Point, then you have some. You kind of have the top, the middle, and it's interesting to see these dynamics between these 3 teams, so we can kind of get into that later. But for the crew there at LC and Velpo, we had Milton Johnson behind the lens on camera. We had the great Zach Sinelli at production, who usually does our Region Football Weekly shows. Color was Jay Simmons, and play-by-play was Michael Bradner. And that's really all we got for our 3 games covered on the game nights in the region built by Von Tobel. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back here on the RSN Wrap-Up Show on the Region Sports Network, the only game in town.
Thinking about what to do after high school? Consider a career with Boilermakers Local 374. As a Boilermaker apprentice, you'll earn while you learn. We offer excellent wages and benefits, and as part of our no-cost hands-on apprenticeship program, you'll learn from the best in state-of-the-art training centers and on the job. Become a union Boilermaker and get on your way to a great career. Find out more, visit www.local374.org or call 219-845-1000.
Have you checked out Centier Bank's student checking account? This no-fee checking account is perfect for students and teens ages 14 to 24 and comes with all the features you need to succeed, such as a debit card, digital banking, and automatic deposit. Centier Bank can help you start establishing good spending habits today for your better tomorrow. For more information, visit Centier.com/student-checking or visit your local branch. If you are under the age of 18, your parent or guardian must also sign on the Centier student checking account. At the age of 25, your account will automatically convert to the Centier checking account. You must deposit $25 to open this account. This account is not eligible for overdraft advantage. Member FDIC.
With electrical services from Economy Electric Heating and Cooling, you can radiate the perfect amount of light and energy into your home. From rewiring and code upgrades to ceiling fans, lighting, security, and more, Economy Electric Heating and Cooling's trained electricians will make sure you can enjoy your home on full power all the time. For a free estimate on electrical work, call Economy Electric Heating and Cooling at 219-923-4441, and you can visit them on the web at 4ajobdoneright.com. That's the number 4ajobdoneright.com.
Develop skills that will last for a lifetime with an apprenticeship with the Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers Local 4, Indiana, Kentucky. The apprenticeship and training program is committed to developing highly skilled bricklayers, terrazzo workers, and ceramic tile setters to provide the construction industry with the best hands in the business. If you are currently working non-union and want better pay with benefits, or if you think learning a new skill with a paid apprenticeship while you earn your associate's degree is the right path for you, visit baclocal4.org/training to learn more about the apprenticeship program. Are you built to succeed?
For over 100 years, Burns Funeral Home and Crematory has been assisting families in their time of need. Serving Northwest Indiana, the staff at Burns Funeral Home will help guide your family in creating a meaningful ceremony. From a simple to elaborate, to traditional or unique, the caring family at Burns Funeral Home will tailor a ceremony to fit your needs. And for your other loved ones, Burns Funeral now has a pet cemetery and crematory. Visit burnsfuneral.com or give them a call at 219-942-1117.
Blythe's Team Sports in Valparaiso is a leader in athletics apparel and equipment sales. With in-house production including screen printing, trophies, embroidery, and more, Blythe's can help you to create the perfect look. For more information, visit them online at teamblythes.com. Blythe's Team Sports in Valparaiso, where the athletes shop.
Centrally located in downtown Indianapolis, the Hampton Inn is just steps away from Bankers Life Fieldhouse. Situated at 105 South Meridian Street, shopping, restaurants, entertainment, and many Indianapolis attractions are in near proximity. Hampton Inn has much to offer, including a hot breakfast, high-speed internet access in every room, as well as a gym fitness center. For reservations, the number is 317-261-1200. The website is hamptonin3.hilton.com. Hampton Inn, Indianapolis, downtown.
Welcome back to the Centier Bank Studio on the RSN Wrap-Up Show. Mike Dewani, Rick Novak, Zach Miller with two eyes on the production here. On the production, don't get it twisted. It's about that time. We're gonna kind of skip over our top 10 segment we kind of did. I think we're kind of somewhat familiar with who's kind of be in that spot, and I think we're going to get to more important, pressing matters. Stuff that actually starting to matter is the sectional pairings, and which start next week now. And we're going to start with the 1A. We're going to kind of lay it out, and we're going to kind of give our thoughts, maybe predictions on what we're expecting, maybe games to look out for next Friday and beyond that. With the Class 1A sectional 41, we start at the top of the bracket. I got my phone out here. We got Bowman at South Newton. We got Pioneer at North Judson St. Pierre. We have Triton at North Newton, and we have Culver Community at South Central. So a couple region teams in there. 1A is... There's not too many 1A teams in the area, so I think for me personally, I have to do my research on this.
I know Pioneer is historically pretty good. North Judson, I believe, has won this sectional the past couple years in a row, and I believe Triton is pretty good this year. But I'm sorry, I am lacking in my 1A football knowledge, unfortunately. But I do know that I believe those are the three best teams in this sectional. So I believe, if I had to bet, I'd probably put my money on one of those teams.
That'll be a good game. Pioneer plays at North Judson the first week. Who knows if that could be a sectional championship in the making. But for South Central, that's kind of one of the teams that are, the region teams that are in this sectional. They're at the bottom of the bracket, so it runs through them. They control their destiny, and they're coming to their place. So we'll see how they do. Pioneer and North Judson sounds like the teams that, one of them's got to go after that first week, but it should be interesting for South Central, being at the bottom of the bracket and maybe having some home field advantage for some teams that are going to have to probably travel pretty far from what I see. Yeah. So moving on to the Class 2A sectional 33, we mentioned Wheeler at the top of the bracket, and they get a bye for the semis, so that is that's big, I think, for Wheeler.
Especially a sectional that you're about to list all the other teams, but the other teams in the sectional are all pretty. There's some teams that are not so good, but there's a few teams that are all pretty evenly matched, I would say. So getting a bye in a sectional like that, I think, is even more advantageous than some other sectionals where certain teams might be very much favored. Because this sectional, you're going to list the teams now, but it's got 3 or 4 teams that I think could win it. So getting a bye in a sectional like that is a huge advantage.
As always, moving on, Wheeler plays the winner of Bremen at Bishop Knoll. I think, again, Wheeler, that may benefit them a little bit. Andrea and your 59ers travel to LaVille to play them. I need to do my research on these teams that are out of the area, especially with these smaller sectionals. You know, it's you have to, again, cover some ground with this 2A. You know, we have a lot of 5A and 6A and 4A programs up here, but once you get down to 3A and below, it gets, you know, you have to travel a little bit.
Oh, of course. I
do
mean,
your research, I say.
Andrain has played LaVille a couple years in a row now in this sectional. LaVille is they're a solid program. Last year the game was very close. The year before that the game was pretty close until the Niners kind of pulled away at the end. It's going to be a bloodbath, I think. LaVille, I know last year they were talking a lot of trash before the game, and you know, then the Niners went in there into their place and beat them. So they're going to be looking for some revenge for sure. And, you know, Andrain is vulnerable, to say the least. They're not what they usually are at all. I mean, if I have to, you know, I got to call it like I see it. So
Fair.
They're not nearly as good as they have been or as they're expected to be, honestly. So they're vulnerable. And, yeah, Bremen is a good program as well. Wheeler is having a solid year, so I do think this is a sectional where it's a few teams have a legitimate shot of winning it for sure.
You usually see Andrean maybe running away with this, typically with the success they've had in probably, you know, the last 2-3 decades. But with how the team maybe, again, there's a lot of juniors on that team that are very solid, and there's a lot of pieces that may not be there in that state runner-up team of last year. So we'll see what they do. And then the winner of that Andrean LaVille game play the winner of Lake Station at Whiting. So I think the way we're seeing at this sectional, I'm liking Wheeler Andrean all regional matchup, you know, all region matchup in the sectional championship.
Yeah,
I think that'll be a fun one.
Yeah, and those teams have some history too. So
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun to see that. I think that would be fun to see that, and I'd love to see a Niners win. So I mean, you know. Just don't let me down, boys.
You homer. I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
You know,
I'm with you. Moving on.
They don't pay me enough not to be a homer. So.
Fair enough. There you go, man. There you go. There you go. Class 3A sectional 25. Moving on. We have Twin Lakes going to Boone Grove, busting in that new field right away, trying it out. First playoff game. That's going to be a fun environment, I think, for the Boone Grove Wolves, opening up sectional play at their new little palace they got over there.
Oh, definitely. I mean, no more games at Valparaiso High School.
Or Wheeler. They were bouncing all over the place.
Okay. I remember I had gone to one of their games when they were playing at Valpo. But hey, it's not. You want to build a legitimate program, you got to have a football field at your school. You know, I think that's a big part of it, right? So
and they deserve it. I mean, they've been playing. What they've done in the past few years.
They're a solid team. They're a solid program. They're having a good year. You know, the sectional is tough, but
completely
they can win some games, and it's cool that they're going to get a home playoff game.
For sure. Winner of that plays Calumet at the Big Beast of Hanover Central. That again, Calumet, I think they're playing pretty well as of late, but running into Hanover Central, going to Cedar Lake in week one. That's in week one of sectionals. That's it's an uphill battle.
Yeah, it's a tough draw,
to say the least. Moving on, an intriguing matchup I like. River Forest has been playing pretty well as of late. I think spoiler alert, they're going to be a bubble team in our next week's rankings. They've strung out a couple wins, but they got to travel to West Lafayette, who won this sectional last year and took care of Hanover Central, who seems, you know, in that year prior, who seems to be arguably one of the favorites going into that sectional of last year. So that'll be, I think, a solid contest for River Forest. You got to kind of make that trip to Purdue land over there.
Yeah, no, it's West Lafayette is a very good team, very good program. It's going to be an uphill battle for the Ingots, unfortunately, I think, and making that long drive down there, it's going to be tough. I know they're going to be up for it, and they are playing well. They're going to need to play their best.
For sure. And then winner of that plays the winner of Rensselaer Central at Griffith. Griffith going to the Boneyard, that's kind of nice. You know, again, getting this experience, getting over hopefully these growing pains for all these juniors and sophomores and the lone senior that are suiting up for the Panthers. So.
Yeah, I mean, they got a good team coming to town. I mean, Rensselaer Central, they are a good program. Their coach, Chris Meeks, he's won a state championship there. He's been the coach there for a long time. Him and Coach Mason have some familiarity. We played Rensselaer when I was in school, when Coach Mason was coaching at Andrean. So, yeah, it's going to be a good game. I mean, Rensselaer, like I said, they're a legitimate football team, and Griffith's going to need to play their best. I mean, they've been, 3 up, 3 down 3 up. You know, they've
Right.
been very, wishy-washy. They're in need to have their best game the entire year to be able to pull out a victory.
Everyone's 0-0 now, they say.
Exactly.
So records don't really matter. It matters what you can do for me now. It's what can you do for me now time, really. And, one matchup that may be intriguing for the semis, if Boone Grove takes care of Twin Lakes and Hanover takes care of Calumet, they will meet in Cedar Lake. And I think that'll be a lot of fireworks. I think I like Hanover, but those are two high-powered offenses that I personally love and I want to go see.
Yeah, I mean, both of them like to. I mean, Hanover's a little bit more balanced, but both of them do like to throw it around a lot. And Boone Grove, we'll see. I mean, if they can get past Twin Lakes, then they'll probably get their crack at Hanover. But we've seen a lot of teams have their shot at them the past few years, and as one has stepped up, they've all fallen.
Many
basically.
have tried and many have fallen
Exactly.
against the Wildcats of Hanover Central. So
they're very mighty. They're a buzzsaw right now. I think West Lafayette beat them last year, but I think Hanover's going to win this sectional.
From what I saw, West Lafayette, I mean, I did a little bit of research on West Lafayette because I know going into this year, at least they were the team to beat last year, and they took care of business. They went pretty far in the tournament, and West Lafayette, I looked at this year, and it may not be the similar team from what beat Hanover last year, so that should be interesting.
It does seem. I've also looked. It does seem they might be a little down. So if there's a year for Hanover to get them, it could be this one.
For sure. Moving on to, I think, one of my favorite sectionals. A lot of the probably storied programs it's basically all region right here. 4A is probably one of the more wide pools in terms of name talent, but also, I mean, just getting a lot of schools and having 3 full rounds of tournament play. We're going to start with, I think, probably the game of this could very well be the sectional championship. I think it's top of the bracket. Hobart's going to go to New Prairie.
It was the sectional championship last year. These teams have played deep in the playoffs for the past 10 years. It seems like almost every year. 2 very good programs. New Prairie beats Hobart last year. They end up making the run down to state. Yeah, this should be a slobber knocker. I mean, there's 2. To use that word again, I mean, this easily is a sectional championship caliber game. Chris and I were talking in the halftime show. This is one of those games where it's, for the people that want seeded sectionals, this is the type of thing that they point to, where you've got basically who I think most people would say are the 2 best teams in the sectional playing each other in the first round. I said at the time, I've always been of the opinion myself that you got to play the teams no matter what. It doesn't matter what round it gets played in, but I do understand that why people want seeding and the games to be played a little bit later on and have a little bit more that big game feel to them. But this game will have a big game feel to it no matter what. It's going to be a good one. New Prairie I don't think is as good as they were last year. I think Hobart is probably just as good as they were last year, maybe a little bit better even. So it should be a very good game, and whoever wins this game has a very good chance of winning the entire sectional.
I'd like to say
and
so.
Potentially going on a longer run, because we saw New Prairie win this sectional last year and make it all the way down to Lucas Oil. So it's going to be a meat grinder. 4A North there's a lot of good teams across the entire northern half of the state in that class, but whoever wins this game has to feel good about their shots and making a deep playoff run.
I'm with you. For New Prairie, they started the year playing the Port, a team that they handled many times in years past, and they let that one get away from them. But then they strung out, I believe, 6 straight, and then I don't know how they did tonight, but they lost to, I believe, Penn last week, only 22-0, which is a very reasonable outcome against one of the area's best 6A programs. But the thing about that sectional that I realize is, again, 2 very talented teams that are probably maybe 1 and 2 in the sectional, but they're at the top of the bracket. So after this game, for Hobart, they have to play on the road the whole sectional. New Prairie, they get this game, and if they were to come out victorious, they got to play the rest of the sectional traveling on a bus. So that's interesting to look at.
Yeah,
it's
not only do they have to play the hardest team to begin with, they also don't get any home field advantage. So
get that gas mileage.
Exactly.
That's really what it is. The winner of that will play a winner of West Side and KV. That'll be an interesting game.
I do think that should be a good game.
A lot of handoffs, I think. But KV, again, tough loss tonight, but I think they could bounce back. I like their offense. They spread it around a little bit. From what I saw, I think they're one of the only teams, I think, in the area that have top 10 passing yards leader, receiver, and a running back. So they are they got some guys out there, and that should be a fun one. I think Westside's playing good football too, as of late, from what we're seeing.
Yeah, no, it should be a good one. Like you said, KV tough loss tonight, but they beat Lowell last week.
Right.
And Westside 6-win season. They built some momentum. I think this is two relatively evenly matched teams that are going to match up here, and that should be a good game.
That's an exciting one. Moving on, East Chicago at Highland. And the winner of that game plays the winner of Culver Academies and Lowell. So we kind of harped on, I guess, already on the 4A. I think, again, it should be an interesting one, to say the least.
I think Lowell got a very nice draw. I think they're positioned to potentially get to that. I mean, it's not a sure thing, obviously, but I think that obviously they avoiding New Prairie and Lowell and being in the complete opposite bracket of them New Prairie and Hobart is very nice for Lowell.
Bottom of the bracket too. You're running through the inferno is what every team has to do.
Exactly, and everybody's got to go down there. So it's a great draw for Lowell. I think they're going to be able to get to the sectional championship, and at that point, it doesn't matter. That they played both they played both Hobart and New Prairie in the regular season, but it won't matter at that point. It'll be a totally different ball game.
Yep. Moving on to our 2 5A sectionals. We're going to start with the sectional 9. Munster's got to travel to Maryville, and it's the Battle of Hammonds Part 2. This time it's going to be at Hammond Central. I think this is Maryville's to lose. I like Morton, I think, to play them in the championship. I think that is a very interesting matchup with maybe some underlying tones in that as well. But it's, again, if Morton takes care of Central like they did last week, it's, being at home against a Maryville team, you never know. But I think Maryville they have a nice little sectional from what I see.
I mean, yeah, I think Maryville plays in a particularly easy sectional, if I'm being honest.
I'd like to say, yeah.
I mean, yeah, compared to the sectional that you're about to list off, which has all the Duneland teams in it, I think that they definitely prefer to be in the sectional they're in. I think if they don't win this sectional, it has to be looked at as a big letdown.
Opening up at Munster and then possibly playing, Morton, Hammond, or Hammond Central.
Morton.
It's theirs to lose.
I think Morton potentially can make this interesting. I think Morton has gotten better. They played some good teams, so they played a high level of competition. I think that they've got some problems defensively. Morton does. So, and obviously they haven't played competition like Maryville has played in the DAC. So, yeah, I think Maryville is a heavy favorite here, but I'm not ruling out Morton yet. I think Morton does have an outside chance to beat them. We've seen Maryville struggle offensively, and if that's the case against Morton can put some points on the board. So we'll see.
We shall see. Moving on to the other sectional that Rick was mentioning. Yeah, this one's probably a little bit more talented, I say. First, we're going to start at the top of the bracket. Michigan City will travel to LaPorte, a team that they beat 35-0 last week against City. They've impressed me a little bit as of late, and then on the bottom, Valpo will be traveling to Chesterton. So
double rivalries to start. We got double geographical rivalries. Obviously, Michigan City handled LaPorte last week. Valpo did play Chesterton Chesterton did play Valpo pretty close.
Yeah.
Only a 28-14. And it's hard to beat teams twice, especially a rival. So Valpo, if they're not careful, that's a big trap game, I think. And then they're going to probably have a rematch with Michigan City. It's going to be tough. Valpo, they're looking at 3 rematches here, whether it's going to be Chesterton, Michigan City, and then Maryville all in a row. That's difficult. Playing teams that are very familiar with you, they're conference rivals, they want to beat you very badly because you won it all last year. So Valpo, if they make it out of this sectional and regional, they're going to have earned it because it's going to be a meat grinder for them.
And what we're seeing, it's probably, from what it sounds like we're predicting, it's probably going to be another chapter of Valparaiso and Maryville in that region. It seems almost you don't want to look too far ahead, but it's
I think
it's theirs to lose.
I think it is theirs to lose, but I'm not. Chesterton, the record is 2-7, but they've played teams pretty close all year long, and Michigan City has a lot of talent. And even though Valpo did go in there and beat them pretty soundly early in the year, as Coach French, young coach there, kind of gets his bearings more, starts to get more acclimated to the Duneland, and as those players start to kind of buy more into him, I think that they're more dangerous. So if they do match up with Valpo again, assuming things happen like we think they are, I think Michigan City could give them another good game. And of course, Maryville, they played them within 2 points earlier in the year, so it's tough. I mean, the way that 5A is set up right now, it's nice because the Duneland basically has a guaranteed path to semi-state every year, but they're going to cannibalize each other to do it. It's all about who's the last man standing, basically, in 5A.
It's a meat grinder, as you would say.
Exactly.
Moving on to the Big Bad Beast, the 6A Sectional 1. We start at the top with Portage traveling to Lake Central. That game was very interesting this year. I believe it was 21-20 with the Xavier Williams-less Lake Central Indians, the battle of the Indians for this game. And I think we're going to probably talk about it when we talk about the whole sectional, but I forgot to mention this, 6A and 5A, there is a bye next week because how small these sectionals are. All these teams that we just previously listed in the last 3 sectionals, they will not be playing next week because of the size of these sectionals. So I believe for a lot of these teams that are banged up, like Chesterton, Lake Central, you have, who am I missing?
Valpo,
thank you. Those teams, I mean, they're looking to get guys back, and
it's big. I mean, especially at that level, I mean, well, yeah, at the smaller levels too, you want to get guys back, but really at that 5A, 6A level, you need all of your horses out there, and because it's so hard to go deep in the playoffs in those classes. Yeah. It's so hard to make a run at a state championship in 5A and 6A, so you need your team as healthy as possible. I mean, and that goes for any class, but like I said, especially at those higher classes. So, yeah, I mean, this next week, take your ice baths, guys, rest up, get enough sleep, and make sure you're using that icy hot and the heating pad and whatnot, and make sure you're good to go for next week.
And the bottom of Sectional 1, a big rematch that has a lot of implications. Obviously, we know what happened last year, but the Lafayette Jefferson is it Bronchos or Broncos?
I think it's Broncos.
It's from our producer Zach Miller. It's spelled like Bronchos, which is interesting, but it's I'm pretty sure
it is. No, it does have an H in it.
It throws you off for a loop. But Lafayette Jefferson Broncos will be traveling to Crown Point to take on the undefeated Bulldogs. Similar position to where they were last year. Do we think the Dogs right their wrongs? And I think this may be a better team from what we saw from them last year.
I think they do. I think they do. It was disappointing that they lost last year, but also no one had thought that they were going to run through the DAC undefeated like they did. It was only disappointing because they just surprised basically the entire region with how they played. Now they're building on that, and I think this year they're even better than they were last year. They're even more focused. They've had another year under probably the best coaching staff in the area. I don't think we see a letdown here. I think they get through this sectional with relative ease, to be honest, and then they're going to get a pretty hard matchup in the regional because that sectional 2 over there with Penn and some teams over that way is stacked. All 4 teams in that sectional are very good. So Crown Point, though, for right now, they just got to worry about getting through this sectional, and once they do that, then they really step up. I mean, 6A, like we said, it's so hard to go deep in this class. Yeah. All the teams are so good. Crown Point, they've ran through the region this year, but I mean, we've seen in years past Maryville running through the region, and then they get deep into the playoffs in 6A, and there's some real good teams in this class throughout the state, whether they be from Indy, Penn, from Fort Wayne. There's, this is where the big boys play, and you got to be ready. And I'm sure the coaching staff will have those guys ready, but they just need to take it 1 week at a time. I thoroughly expect them to get through this sectional, and then from that point on, I want to see them take it as far as they can, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I think the floor for them, honestly, after that pretty disappointing season last year, I think the floor for them in terms of what is a promising season is a sectional championship.
I think so. I mean, they've raised the expectation in that program,
and rightfully. I mean, they're just playing fantastic. They haven't really met their maker yet. Again, Valpo looked like a pretty, looked like a maker in this area, and they got away from them. Crown Point, they know how to win close, they know how to win big, and they got the players to do whatever it takes. So.
Oh yeah, they've got. I mean, I think we were talking about this earlier. The versatility of their team. I mean, they can play smash mouth football. Balanced. They can air it out with Ehrlich. On defense, they're extremely hard to move the ball against. Their special teams are pretty solid. They're just an all-around solid football team.
Yeah.
It's but like I said, there's solid football teams up and down 6A. So as they get deeper in the playoffs, every team they're going to play is good. So I want to see how far this team can take it. I mean, I want to see Buzz win one before he's done, so I'm rooting for them all the way, but it's going to be tough.
It's the best time of the year. They said all records don't matter. It's 0-0 across the board. It's about that time where it's playoff time, man. It doesn't get much better than this. Boys become men at this rate.
At the end of next week, about half the teams in the state will be done playing football.
Some will be in and some will be out.
Yep, exactly.
So, that's all we really got. We got one more thing to plug, I think. Talk to me about it a little bit.
We got the
clips.
Remember the Region.
There it
This is our GoFundMe. We are trying to digitize all of these old tapes. We've got games from, this is Highland at Andrean from 1998. This is West Side and Andrean from 1971.
Yeah, we've been plugging that all week.
We've got games, any game you can think of, we've got it. But the problem is we've only got them on tape, and tape doesn't last that long. Or it's lasted long, but not much longer, I don't think. So we need to get this digitized, and we're trying to make a digital library. Everything will be there. Everyone will be able to watch you whenever you want. You'll be able to watch your grandpa, your uncle, your cousin, your dog, whatever. Anything you want to watch, you can. But we need some money to do it. That's the problem. We're a small business, and this is pretty expensive. It's much more expensive than you probably think. So we're asking to please donate to our GoFundMe. It's Remember the Region. We've been plugging the links all over the place. Anything that you can spare to give, we greatly appreciate it, because it really would be such a shame to lose these games, because it's such a treasure trove.
It's history.
It is history, and if they're gone, they're gone. This Andrean versus West Side from 1971. There's no other record of this. This is the last one.
That's true.
And if this is destroyed, it's destroyed. So, and it would be a shame. There's we were watching the Mud Bowl upstairs a little bit while ago, the 1995 Hobart Griffith game, legendary game in the region. It's these types of games that we've got here that are in danger of being lost. So that's why we're reaching out to our neighbors, our viewers, our constituents out there, and asking, chip in what you can if you feel so inclined. It would mean a lot to us.
How could you say no to that? You could maybe say no to me, but you can't say no to that, man. That's, again, with what we got, Remember the Region. Check that link out on all of our social media platforms. It's also found in our link tree, which is on the bios of all of our platforms. But yeah, anything else? Kind of sending this off tonight. You had a fantastic monologue there at the club.
Oh, stop!
It's about that time, man. That's it, man. Week 9 is in the books, just like that. It flies by, but. Again, I think that's all we got here on the RSN Wrap-Up Show. I want to give a special shout-out first off to our executive producer, Chris Ramirez, our operations manager, Rich Castillo, our coordinating producer, Claude Martinez, who was on his last hurrah tonight. I want to give a special shout-out to him. He's taught a lot of us here a lot of things, and we love that dude. We thank him for everything. It was a pleasure working with him. Studio manager and producer for the night, Zach Miller, doing it all. Again, he's...
Stud.
It's stud. A lot of studs around here. Studio assistant James Chalos with Rick Novak. I'm Mike Dewan on the RSN Wrap-Up Show. Good night, everybody. And from Region Sports Network, the only game in town.